Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and today we're going to look at getting Godot Engine to work with Visual Studio. You see, in the past, I've actually compiled most recent builds. It's pretty simple. It uses the Scons build system, and you just run a single-line command, and it'll compile it for you. But until now, I've never actually tried to work with the Godot Engine. I ran into a huge problem today. There is no Visual Studio project. That means if you are happy with things like IntelliSense, debugging, and all those things that you normally take for granted in Visual Studio, they are not available to you. It's easy to build from the command line using Scons, but as I said, those things aren't readily available, and there is no really simple way of getting a Scons project into Visual Studio. It's not like you can just do a file import Scons project and off you go. However, today I spent some time trying to figure out this exact process, and it's not actually that hard once you've got it figured out, and that's what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to show you completely from scratch how to build and use the Godot engine from Visual Studio. And generally, again, you're only going to want to do this if you want to contribute to it, contribute to the development of Godot, or you want to create extensions or modify it yourself, or if you want to work primarily in C++. So today what we're going to look at is getting it up and running. You're still going to use Scons for your building, but you'll be doing it directly from Visual Studio. You'll have full debugger support and most important to me, full IntelliSense support. So let's get started. I'm going to have to pause a lot. So some of these processes are pretty long running, so I'm just going to start them off, pause it, and then come back when it's complete. But first off, of course, you're going to need to have Visual Studio pre-installed. Also, I want you to have Scons and Git pre-configured. Scons is a Python build system. Just Google for it, SCONS. It's a prerequisite to build Godot Engine in any form whatsoever, so get it installed. It's basically a matter of installing the right version of Python and maybe setting an environment variable too. Nothing too complex. Ditto for Git. Git is source control format / program / everything, and at this point in time, Git is so ubiquitous that you're going to want it installed anyway. So have both of those up and running. Next thing is you're going to need a version of Visual. Personally, I'm using Visual Studio 2013 Community Edition. As you can see, I've actually got the 2015 release candidate installed as well, and the same process works for it. But in this case, I'm using 2013 for all of the following. So those are things you want to have pre-configured. You're going to want to have Git pre-configured and available in the path, Python and Scons available in the path, and then you're going to want to run the command line tools, the command prompt, for Visual Studio 2013. It's very critical that you install it, that you run it this and not a normal command prompt, because we need to have all the environments set for basically vcvars.bat set, which tells Visual Studio where everything is. So go ahead and run that. And we're just going to install, we're going to start very, very beginning. So we're going to do a source pull using Git, and then go from there. I've already got one, so let me just get rid of it. Godot. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, so fresh install, we're starting from scratch. First thing we're going to need to do is go ahead and pull Git. Now, all those things I told you about earlier that I want you to have installed, let's make sure that they're up and running. So first off, make sure you're in this command prompt. It doesn't have to be the 32 or the 64, whatever is your environment, but make sure that you start off with this vcvars set. And then go which Git. Oh, sorry, where. Wrong platform. Where Git, and it should return a path like this. If it does, your Git is properly configured. If it doesn't, you need to install and configure Git right. Some operating systems require you to do a reboot after changing system path variables, so you may have to just do a reboot and then try again. If that doesn't work, you're going to have to do some troubleshooting to make sure Git works. Also do the same thing for Scons. And assuming both of these return a valid value, great, we're set up and running. Let's go. So first thing we're going to do is do a Git clone of the repository. So just Git and then clone and then the path. The path's available on the GitHub webpage for Godot, but it's github.com/occamstudio/Godot.git. And just click that and run. It's about 60 megs worth of files to download. That'll be pretty fast for me, so I'll just leave this one running as opposed to pausing and coming back. So alright, I'm bored. And done. Okay, so that means it just pulled down that repository. Now, I guess I should have said, change into whatever directory you want the repository to be installed in. I did it off my C root. So that will pull it down as a cloning into Godot. So right now I have a folder called Godot available. So you would have obviously wanted to change into whatever directory you wanted to create it under first. So let's just change into Godot now. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and build Godot the first time. And that's just a matter of calling Scons. And normally it's just this. But for this tutorial, we have one other little key thing we want to do. So we wanted to create a Visual Studio project for us. And that's VS, I can't type today, why am I getting J's on my, okay, VS proj equals yes, followed by platform equals Windows. Now this, if everything's set up and right, you're going to start getting spammed with text like this. This is just a command line build from Visual Studio. If you do not get this, it either means you're not in this proper VC-vars environment, you're not in the right directory, so there's no Scons construct. Here, let me show you. So this is the Godot folder we just ran from. And if we look in that directory, there is this file here called sconstruct. You want to make sure you're in that directory when you run the scons command. So if you do get this, if you don't get this result, that's probably what it was. Now on my computer, this process takes about 5 or 6 minutes, so there's no sense sitting here, waiting for it to finish compiling. But that's exactly what it's doing. It's compiling and linking both the Godot libraries and then all the tools built on top. So again, it's a bit of a resource-intensive process, especially the first time you do it. And if you've got an older, slow computer, this could take several minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes type thing. If you've got a fast computer, you may be done already. I am on an i7, I don't even remember which one it is, about a 1.5 year old i7 decent processor with 8 gigs of RAM. And like I said, this is about a 5 or 10 minute process for me. So let it just go ahead and run, and I will be back before you can say back. And I'm back. I lied a bit. I think that was a little bit over 10 minutes, to be honest. Guess I could check the clock on my video later on. But that took a while. But as you can see, at the end, it finished compiled, and the key thing is that you see these guys too. This is it creating the Visual Studio projects that we need, and adding all the different configurations and such in. And that is exactly what we require. Now what we're going to have to do is go ahead and configure Visual Studio to work for us. And this is going to take a couple of hoops, unfortunately. The very first thing we're going to need to do is create a batch file right here. And you'll see why in a second, but let's just go ahead and create one. Let's call it build.bat. And obviously you can use whatever text editor you want, but what you want to do is set vc underscore path equals %1. Let me jack this up a bit so you can. Set vc underscore path equals %1. That's just saying that set the parameter being passed in, the first parameter being passed into us. It would ultimately be passed in from Visual Studio. We're going to set it to a variable called vcPath, and then we're just going to turn around and call that value. So this is running the right version of Visual Studio from the command line, and then we want to call scons platform. Oh, scans. Let's do that right. So really, it's just that command we just used to build a second ago. We just want to string these two together into the same line. This is ultimately going to turn into c:/path2/visual/studio/ and then ultimately your Visual Studio run script. And then we just basically want to make these two calls when we call build.bat. So just create that in your root of your Godot folder and save. So let's make sure that it's there, which it is, but build.bat. All right, perfect. So now let's go ahead and fire up Visual Studio. It is, I think, Godot.sln. So fire up the solution and give it a few minutes to parse. There's a lot of files for it to go through. It's creating the IntelliSense database and such. Although, truth of the matter is, it's not going to do a very good job to start. And that's the next thing we're going to take care of. And unfortunately, we have one more build in the process. So that build we just did a second ago, yeah, we got to do it again. So there's going to be another 10 or 15 minute pause in this production. But fortunately, once that build is initially done, you only really have to do it like if you make changes to your project files. Otherwise, it should be a much shorter build, subsequent builds when you do make changes. All right, so we now have a project, as you can see over here. Ta-da! Now the problem is going to be if I actually go in and open some source. So let's open up editor file. Ooh, yeah, lots and lots and lots of errors. And now, now that I've opened one, we come back over here and hover. We have 100 errors, and that's just 100 before it cut off. And this is quite easily fixed. We just need to set up a bunch of include paths in our project, not in our solution, in our project. So let's go ahead and do that now, and we should be able to get rid of all of these underscores. Oh, sorry, underlines. So right-click on your project over here in the Solution Explorer and choose Properties. And you want to go over to VC Directories right here, and your Include Directories. At the end here, I wish I could blow this up for you. Unfortunately, I can't. However, if you go to GameFromScratch.com, there's screenshots of this entire process. So there's a post called Godot in Visual Studio. If you Google it, you'll probably be able to find that as well. But this post, this video I'm doing, everything has been done text line by line there too. So if you need a little bit more reference of what I'm doing in this video, because I know it's a little hard to see, go there. Oh, actually, I wonder if I can... I don't think this will help at all. Turn presentation mode on. That might help a little bit. So go into our properties. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so go over to the include path, as you can see right here, and there's a semicolon to terminate at the end, and you want to keep that. And now we're going to add a bunch more, and we're going to be using this one a lot. So grab it, copy and paste. So solution directory, this is just the root of our projects directory. Oh, sorry, not solution directory, project directory. Like that. Go ahead and copy that. And we actually want to do that. We want to have one path to the very root of our directory, and then we're going to paste it, / and then we're going to add core, and then a semicolon, and then paste it, and then / core / math, and a semicolon, and paste it, / tools, and a semicolon, paste it, / drivers, or drivers, and a semicolon, and paste it one last time, / platform, / Windows, and a semicolon. So what we've just done is we've told Visual Studio to search for these additional include folders. And each one of these paths off of the root of our project. So basically, you're right. Okay, let's just do this. Here is where it'll start searching. So in the root of our path, it's now going to start looking for each of these directories we just added. So, for example, well, one was the very root. One was core. So it's now going to look for header files in core. And there's also going to be math. So it's going to start looking here. So if you go back to our Visual Studio, you'll see these paths, for example. Look for OS keyboard, and it's not going to ever find it unless these are all defined. And now that they are, I should be able to click Apply. And then eventually all of these underlines should go away. Perfect. Okay, so now we have set up so IntelliSense knows what it's doing. No more ugly squiggly arrows, except for one array potentially, and I don't know why it keeps popping up. And if one of you knows, shoot me a comment, because the little bastard is pissing me off. But hopefully that doesn't... there it is. I don't know why this is happening. We'll get back to it in a moment. So if one of you guys do know the answer to why this is happening, I would love to know, because it's, I think, a bug in Visual Studio, if I'm honest. So next we got to set up our nmake project. We're not using the built-in build system from Visual Studio. We're using Scons instead. So now we need to do a little bit of configuration. And this is what it did out of the box. And unfortunately, the out-of-the-box setup just doesn't work. So we need to create our own, and that's why we did that script earlier. And what we want to do is build and output. Output is what's going to run after the build, and build is what's going to actually make the build. There's a rebuild and a clean. I don't really find the need for any of them, to be honest. Either of them, to be honest. You can get away, create the same thing by deleting a file if you really have to. But if you go to GameFromScratch.com, there was a post that really helped me figure this stuff out, and I linked to it. And it's also got scripts for doing a rebuild and a clean command. If you really care about adding those, again, find the post Godot and Visual Studio on GameFromScratch.com. and then click the linked page, and you can figure it out from there. It's not a big process, but I don't actually need them, so no sense to really complicate this. So we're going to want to replace all of that completely. And instead what we want to put here is $, project dir, so build.bat. So we're basically just saying run build.bat from our project directory. And pass it the parameters. This is that %1 that we used in the script. And it's vc install directory. So vc install dir. And this is vc vars all.bat. And what we're basically doing here is giving Visual Studio the programmatic equivalent of running that guy. So we're just doing it in script. So this is going to fire off and call the VCVARS environment variable and then call our scons. And that's very critical. That's why this earlier version blows up, because it doesn't actually import these environment variables correctly. So you could actually modify this. You could basically paste this command right here into a script and just wrap it in this call. Like just pass in this value to it, but if you care about those two. So finally, we want to go ahead and do our output. And this is what's going to run when our compilation is complete. And that's just a matter of project directory, bin / Godot window tool .exe, and that's the executable formed for by the Godot engine. In theory, I've built one. Let's go check it out. Oh, I'm not in temp. I'm in here. Godot bin, and we're just telling it to run that guy. So that's the ultimate fruits of our effort of this compilation. The compiling process is creating all the libraries that this depends on, but ultimately it's creating this executable using those libraries. And that's what we want to run or debug when we're running Godot itself. Basically, this is the Godot editor we're going to go ahead and run. And that's it. So just hit apply, and then OK. And finally, one more build. Sorry about this. So now if you just come in and do a build, if everything is set up and running correctly, you'll see basically this entire process that we saw earlier, all this junk, is going to happen again. But this time, it's going to happen from within Visual Studio. And once again, it's going to take 5, 10, 15 minutes to run, so I will see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, welcome back. All done. So now we're up and built, in theory. We should be able to just go ahead and debug now. Let's be optimistic and assume we can. So let's go over to the class view over here and find a class to... Yeah, we use main start. Let's go find that guy. Come on. You. Alright, so this is the editor's main entry point. So let's just go ahead and set a breakpoint. So this will or will not work if we work successfully. So let's see if it actually worked out for us. So just come into debug and start debugging. If you've set everything up right, don't worry, it's going to say build, but this is just a link. So this isn't going to take ages. So say yes, go ahead, do that. So Scons kicks off. Scons is not doing a full build. I'm not going to have to pause for this. It should only take a couple of seconds. Unless I screwed something up. And... Alright, more in a couple of seconds. There we go. And we're firing up Godot, and boom, we just hit our first breakpoint. And as you can see, we have the ability to debug. Awesome. So I can now, let's see if I can do an inspect. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to, but quick watch. Alright, was that a bad example? Yeah, nothing's actually set, so let's start doing some walk. Grrr. Alright, this is about the 10th time I've done that to myself. Unfortunately, I really need to remap Camtasia, but the video recording software I use and Visual Studio use the same hotkeys for debugging. So when I hit step next in Visual Studio, I unfortunately say, okay, stop recording in Camtasia, which is why you now see my editor up in front of me, so I'm going to have to do some editing of this video when we are done. So let's head on back. Oh, wrong thing. There we go. So what I unfortunately hit was step over. And unfortunately, that that kind of killed me. So as you see, debugging is working, stepping is working. So let's just do a continue. And as you can see, here's Godot as normal. It might be slightly slower because this is a debug build as opposed to a release build, but totally normal, fully compiled, up-to-date version of the Godot engine. This is a development build, so you'll see if it looks slightly different than what you're currently using. It's because they're actually doing a bit of a UI makeover. It's starting to look much prettier. You can also see that they now have much pretty dialogues. So anyways, that's only going to be relevant for a couple more days until this is formally released. But as you can see, this is a development build up and running, and it's running from Visual Studio, which we can now debug. So if you want to contribute to the to the Godot project, but you want to be using Visual Studio, just run through the process we just did. And as you see, when you come into the code right here, let's actually pick something like here, script loop. So now you will see script underscore loop and full code completion. So all of the niceties that you get from working with Visual Studio are there. Now let me just actually Control Z out of that, because otherwise it's going to trigger a build, and I don't really want to do that. So yeah, as you can see, you have full abilities within Visual Studio. Now that mystery project is this guy. I don't know why this is kicking in. It's a single line that its array is mismatched, and the weirdest thing is, when I open that file, the error goes away. I have no idea what's causing that. So anyways, it's basically telling me that there's this one array usage in here, and it does not like it for some reason. But the minute I actually go into the header file, it's absolutely happy again. But if I leave the header file and go into other code, I might have to go into a CPP file. You see, if I go into a CPP file, then suddenly I get this error back. And it's that IntelliSense no instance of constructor for array matches this arguments list. And it's an empty constructor. So I have no idea what's going on here, why this is triggering. And then the second you come in here, it goes away. I also get these weird lines through this strange markup in this folder, in this file. So there's something weird going on with this one, and I don't know if it's a bug, but it doesn't ultimately affect anything. And instead of having thousands upon thousands of errors now, you have one that goes away the second you look at it funny. So don't worry about that, and hopefully this won't happen on your computer. So if you do know why this is happening, shoot me a comment, because this one's kind of confusing to me. I don't care enough to dig into it too much more, but I would love to know why it's actually doing this. But it is an error you can completely ignore if you happen to get it yourself. It doesn't interfere with the build process at all. So you're off to the races. So anyways, let's do a quick recap of how to get up and going. So once again, this is available on on GameFromScratch.com, and the name of the post is Godot in Visual Studio. So the entire step-by-step process we just went through is available in text and screenshot form. So if I lost you anywhere in the video, go check that out. But your process is more or less git clone the original source code repository, then do a build using Scons platform equals Windows, but make sure you pass in the vsproj equals yes, and that will generate your project files. Create that batch file with those 2 lines in it. Then go into Visual Studio and configure your include files to include those 5 or 6 additional paths. Then you go into your nmake settings. Also, you set your output, so that it's the path to the godot.windows.tools.exe executable, and then you go through and configure nmake, and in nmake you set no, that was it. What am I missing? I'm missing a step. Configure the paths, configure nmake, so that the build command calls that batch file and that it calls output to the executable you just generated, and then you just do a build. And then from that point on, you should be able to get full IntelliSense, full debugging, everything you want will now work directly from Visual Studio. Hope you found that useful. Thanks a lot for sticking in. See you later. Bye.